Chapter 32. A Fairy Tale Love, 1985. Qiuling was born in 1959 in the coastal town of Putian, Fujian Province, where the sea sang in the cannon fire and the winds carried whispers of war. Just 1 year earlier, the Kinmen artillery bombardment had gripped the world. China and Taiwan had exchanged more than artillery shells. Each volley was a thunderclap of ideology, shaking the fragile bones of a newly divided world. At the center of it all stood her father, an artillery commander in the People's Liberation Army, issuing orders as steel screamed through the sky. Her mother followed not behind him, but beside him, an unarmed soldier in the shadows of war. It was in that crucible, where explosions drowned lullabies and dreams were drafted into duty, that Qiuling was born. She came into the world with smoke in her lungs and steel in her bones. And so, years later, she would smile at me with fierce pride and say,
"I'm a daughter of the military."
She wasn't exaggerating. War was not a story she heard, it was the soil she grew from. Her family wasn't forged by fire, they were fire. And when I finally stepped into her home, years later, as the wide-eyed rookie son-in-law, I realized the war had never ended. It had simply moved indoors. That night, after my catastrophic visit, I parted reluctantly from my Cinderella and boarded the bus home. The journey from Sky Mountain New Village in the southwest to my home in the northeast took nearly 90 minutes. The city rolled past my window like a dream, refracted through a mosaic of yellowed street lamps and sterile new fluorescents. I leaned against the cold glass, half asleep, half awake, drifting through the city and my own tangled thoughts. Passengers dozed around me, their heads swaying in tired unison as the old bus rattled over potholes and memories. But I was somewhere else entirely. I was still in her world. Qiuling. I had begun to see not just a woman, but a myth in her. A fairy tale figure not dressed in velvet or glass, but clothed in resilience and worn slippers. A princess not locked in a tower, but trapped in a house where tempers exploded like landmines, and kindness passed silently through rooms like a ghost. She wasn't just beautiful. She was beautiful despite it all. Despite the shouting, despite the thanklessness, despite the loneliness that had never been spoken aloud. And yet, she smiled, radiantly, openly, as if love still made sense, as if life somehow had not broken her. Could someone remain that pure after so much pain? Was this love, or was this grace? Perhaps fairy tales didn't belong in forests or castles, or they lived in narrow kitchens and shared bathrooms. Perhaps I had stepped into one already on a creaky city bus, under flickering lights, beside peeling windows. Had I become her prince? Or was I still just a dwarf, stumbling behind her with wide eyes and a hopeful heart? I didn't know. All I knew was this. I was hers. This Snow White. This Cinderella. This woman I barely understood. She was already my blessing. And so, under the sleepy hum of the city, I made a promise. Not aloud, not with fanfare, just a quiet vow forged in the dim corridor of my soul. I will rescue her. I will marry her soon. And we will live together, happily ever after. A few weeks later, the Lunar New Year arrived. On New Year's Day morning, I brought Qiuling to my grandmother's house for Bainian, the customary New Year's greeting ritual. This annual gathering brought my uncles, aunts, and extended family together in warmth and celebration. But this year was different. This wasn't just a visit. This was an announcement. This was an engagement. When Qiuling realized what I was about to do, her eyes widened with joy and disbelief. This wasn't a whispered promise in some quiet alleyway. This wasn't a hopeful maybe. This was real. She had been deceived before. She had been lied to and discarded for so long. But not anymore. This time there was no mask, no hidden motive, No second guessing. This time, it was forever. When Kuling and I stepped into my grandma's house, everyone froze. Grandmother looked up, eyes narrowing with curiosity, eyebrows arched in mild disapproval.
Little Feng has a girlfriend now?
The words were not a question. They were a challenge. Then the sigh.
And why didn't I hear about this sooner?
It wasn't anger, it was legacy. I had disrupted the sacred protocol of Ningbo families, hierarchical process, introductions scheduled by the stars. Bringing a woman home unannounced? Unheard of. In the Ningbo tradition, a girlfriend doesn't arrive. She is vetted. She is studied. She is slowly folded into the fabric. But I smiled. Because, Grandma, I wanted to surprise you. She turned her gaze to Kuling, silent, measuring. Seconds passed. Then, at last, her lips curved into a gentle chuckle.
Good, good, nice girl.
The spell was broken. Laughter resumed. Warmth returned. The family uncoiled, ready to accept this mysterious girl who had walked through the storm with me. But beneath the smiles I could sense it, the scrutiny. My aunts whispered politely, but their eyes observed everything. My youngest aunt, the sharpest of them all, leaned in so close I thought she might count the strands of Kuling's hair. And for the first time I saw something rare in Kuling. Fear. Not overt, but subtle. The girl who stared down chaos at home and laughed through storms was now fidgeting, her fingers tugging at her sleeves and her eyes darting around. The atmosphere had shifted. These weren't military explosions, but rather the weight of ancestral expectations. My youngest aunt's husband made the most surprising comment among everyone present that day. After Kuling stepped back, he leaned in and shared his thoughts with straightforward assurance.
Little Feng is lucky.
The room fell silent. He gestured toward her former seat.
Did you notice her hands? Those hands belong to someone who engages in real work. Hands that have experienced struggle. That builds homes. That holds families together.
I was stunned. I had always seen Kuling's laughter, her warmth, her joy, but I had missed her hands. Rough, calloused, swollen from winters spent hand-washing laundry in ice-cold water. Not delicate, not manicured, but functional and faithful. She was aware of that and tried to hide them in public. Whenever I held her hand, she would pull away.
They're ugly.
She'd whisper.
So ugly.
But they weren't. They were proof that she had endured, that she had sacrificed, that she had loved through action, not words. And someday, they would be the hands to raise our children, that fold dumplings, that build the temple of our life together. That night, after we left, Kuling spoke in a voice I'd never heard before. A whisper.
I was so nervous,
she said.
I thought maybe I wasn't pretty enough.
This woman, who had always danced through difficulty as if it were a game board, was now uncertain and insecure. Well, my family's traditions, polished etiquette, and pointed gazes were probably another battlefield, another kind of war, one perhaps harder than the one she grew up in. Kuling once told me a story from when she was 14 or 15, and before she even reached the end, I couldn't help myself. What? Who in their right mind would send a child on a journey like that? This wasn't just shocking to the genteel Ningbo people of Shanghai who prized order, safety, and etiquette. It was child abuse. Her task? To ride her father's massive 28-inch Phoenix brand bicycle across the city alone to visit her grandmother in Pudong. The problem? She was too small to reach the seat. So she did what any fearless, underage, wild-hearted girl would do. She stood between the frame, balanced precariously inside the triangle, and pedaled while standing up. No brakes, no gears, no helmet, no logic. Just a girl weaving through the chaos of 1970s Shanghai traffic like a circus act gone rogue. Her route? From Sky Mountain New Village, in far west Shanghai, to Jinqiao Town, Pudong, in the far east, 10 miles one way, across main roads, gravel paths, dirt alleys, over the Huangpu River, by ferry. The return trip, that's where things got truly insane. Beaming with rural generosity, her grandmother and uncle stuffed 100 pounds of rice onto the bike. Kuling herself only weighed 70. To prevent the overloaded bicycle from tipping over backward, they tied 2 giant Napa cabbages to the handlebars for balance. In the realm of rural logic, this made perfect sense. To me, it sounded like a stunt from a slapstick comedy. A tiny teenage girl, arms stretched like a human clothesline, eyes barely peeking over the handlebars, lurching through the city like a vegetable-powered freight train. And yet, she did it. She stopped at every red light, pushing the beast of a bike uphill. She dismounted at the ferry ramps, hauling her cargo with both hands. I was familiar with the route, so I asked, how? Surely she must have begged strangers for help. She must lean on the kindness of passing uncles. Asked ferry workers to help steady the load. But she never said. Kuling wasn't one to brag. She just smiled like it was nothing. Like she'd just picked up a bag of scallions from the corner store. I used to tease her. You're more of a countryside girl than a Shanghai girl. And she'd shoot me a glare that could melt bricks. But let's be honest, no Shanghai girl in her right mind would have done what she did. It would have been like a Chinese parent in Vancouver today handing their 14-year-old daughter no driver's license, no GPS, the keys to an 18-wheeler, and telling her, drive to Texas, pick up 10,000 gallons of gasoline, and haul it back to British Columbia. A Texan family might do that, but Chinese parents? Never. Yet somehow Kuling did it. This wasn't just grit. It wasn't just stubbornness. It was something else. A fearless, almost reckless determination. The kind that says, even if I have to crawl, I'll make it home. And that was Kuling, my circus girl, my country warrior, my unstoppable cabbage-laden Cinderella. If my first visit to Kuling's home felt like storming the beaches of Normandy, a wide-eyed rookie soldier crawling through chaos, dodging blasts of shouted orders, frozen in a whirlwind of unfamiliar fury, then Kuling's first visit to my home was the total opposite. She didn't step in like a stranger. She stepped in like someone returning. There was no hesitation, no awkward silence, just a soft, natural grace like a missing piece quietly slipping into place. My younger sister and brother? They didn't welcome her as a guest. They embraced her like a sibling who had simply been away for a while, as if they'd been waiting for her without realizing it, as if they'd always known. Before Kuling ever set foot in my home, I had told her gently, both of my parents have passed away. I only have a younger sister and a younger brother. I expected her to nod, to offer a kind, respectful silence. But she froze. Her eyes widened, then shimmered. Tears rose, catching her off guard. She didn't speak at first. She simply felt all at once, all too deeply. And then,
This makes me so sad, truly so sad.
her voice broke.
So I'll never get to meet your parents? Never get to call them Mama or Baba? I have already made up my mind. I was going to be a good daughter-in-law. I wanted to take care of them.
The tears spilled freely, rolling down her cheeks as her hands trembled.
Then I must take care of you, and I must take care of your younger sister and brother.
She looked at me then, her face tear-streaked but unflinching. There was no performance in it. Just the unshakable resolve of someone who had made a vow even if no one asked her to, just as she firmly insisted on revealing her past to me. This was before we even discussed the topic of marriage. There were no formal plans, yet she had already made her choice. My siblings excelled in their studies. My sister was among the few who passed the first college entrance exam after the Cultural Revolution, arguably one of the toughest in Chinese history. She became a chemical engineer at the Shanghai Light Industry Design Institute. My brother earned a philosophy degree from Fudan University, followed by a master's from Jiaotong University, and now teaches at the East China University of Political Science and Law. And Qiuling? She was straightforward, modest, unpretentious, and lacking an elite education. She didn't use grandiloquent speech. So I pondered, would they recognize the qualities I admired? And then Qiuling entered. Not as a guest, but as though she had always belonged in this narrative. She didn't just break the ice, she melted it completely. My siblings' usual reserve, their cautious distance, vanished instantly. The polite formalities disappeared, along with the silent judgments and intellectual walls they had constructed to maintain distance from others. What was left? Warmth. She addressed them as a sister would, nurtured them like a mother, and shared laughter as a friend. She presented thoughtful gifts, not lavish but useful. She gave my sister a fine silk scarf, my brother a box of pens, and 2 books useful, sincere, and perfectly suited. She had observed them, understood them, seen them. Before I could breathe, they called her Qiuling Jiejie, big sister, repeatedly, not with caution, not in a formal way, but with warmth. There was no test or adjustment period. It was simply an immediate, unconditional welcome, as if our family tree had already etched her name somewhere unseen. That evening, after Qiuling left, my siblings couldn't hide their enthusiasm.
Qiuling Jiejie is everything we had hoped for.
She's even more amazing than we ever imagined.
They radiated joy and gratitude. They turned to me, glowing and happy.
Thank you.
I blinked. Thank you? I anticipated questions and hesitations. However, to my surprise, they expressed their gratitude, thanking me for introducing someone like her into our lives. Even months afterward, they remained in disbelief.
After all we've been through, after the Cultural Revolution, in a city as calculating as Shanghai, how does someone like Qiuling Jiejie even exist?
She never thinks about herself, only about others.
How did our big brother get so lucky?
I always believed that love was something we discovered, something we selected and nurtured. However, over time, I realized true love is not discovered or found. It is bestowed. Not a pursuit, but something that was arranged for us long before we even knew to seek it. From my second visit onward, I also transitioned from being a guest in Qiuling's home to becoming a part of it. Each time I entered, her parents welcomed me not with formality, but with a familiar ritual. A full-course meal was always ready, starting with cold dishes, followed by steaming meals, bubbling soup, and delicate stir-fries. And there was wine. Though they abstained from drinking, they made it a point to pour me a glass, as that was their way of honoring a son-in-law. Yet one aspect remained constant. Without exception, her father would find some minor issue to debate with his old woman assistant in the kitchen at every dinner.
Too much salt! The fish is overcooked. Why did you cut the tofu like that?
He didn't really need a reason, he just needed someone to yell at. Qiuling's mother, ever the quiet general in an unwinnable war, would mutter under her breath,
This old man, he never makes any sense.
And that was my cue. I would leap into action with military precision, not to stop him, but to redirect him. Dad, what was the position of your corps during the Second Taiwan Strait crisis? I just read about the 10 marshals. Who was your favorite? In an instant, his thunderous scowl would vanish. His eyes would narrow into delighted slits. His cheeks would puff with pride. His fingers would tap the table like a battlefield map unfolding before him.
Today, Chen Yi, Shu Shangtian. Ah,
but no one likes Lin Biao in the early years.
He'd start naming commanders like he was reciting family members. I simply had to nod and drop a few strategic names now and then, like I was feeding coal to a steam engine. The argument? Forgotten. The kitchen storm? Disarmed. Peace restored. One evening, Kuling pulled me aside, giggling with the unfiltered joy of someone who had just been pardoned.
What did you feed my dad? What kind of magic drug did you use on him? He likes you so much now, he actually stopped yelling at me. I'm finally free.
Her face beamed with such irrepressible delight, like watching sunshine take human form. I realized that the Cinderella of the household had changed. She was no longer the one scolded in the kitchen, no longer the target of thunder and lectures, no longer the overlooked daughter navigating family landmines. She had become the princess, even her parents. The fiery rulers of that tiny kingdom began to listen to her, not because she raised her voice, but because the winds had shifted, because I had entered the battlefield not with defiance, but with deference, not with arguments, but with understanding. And together, quietly and lovingly, we changed the terrain. For isn't that what love does? It softens the hard edges, quiets the storms, and plants seeds of peace in the most war-torn soil. And in that house, once a fortress of noise and heat, mercy had bloomed, and so had she.